Welcome everyone. We are back for another amazing video for all of you. And just to remind everybody, we are actually filming live right here in the Your Eggs offices. So you might hear some noise in the background, some doors closing. We're all busy supporting couples, trying to allow them to reach their dream of having their family. We might even have some couples watching while we're recording. So, we welcome all of that, and we just want to let you know that's what's going on in the background. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you take care of that because we're providing amazing information for all of you who are on this egg donor journey. And today is going to be absolutely no different. Actually, today I have a good friend of mine who's an IVF coordinator. Shaundre is here. And I thought she would be an amazing person to join me on a video to be able to share some of these real live stories of couples who have to make these difficult decisions and go through this whole process of IVF and egg donation. So welcome, Shaundre. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Dr. Sklar. It's nice being here.
Yeah. So, we've talked about a lot of different stories over the years in terms of couples who are going through IVF and the difficulties and the celebrations, right? We have to acknowledge all the wins that we've had with that. The end goal for all of these couples is to have a family. And the family, to me, is the most crucial piece behind all of this. However that family is formed, biological or not, in the end, I always find that's what these couples really just, that's what means the most to them. And they forget about everything else, those long journeys of going through the struggles of fertility and IVF when they have their family and their baby in their arms. Do you feel the same way?
Yes. I mean, we've seen so many experiences and so many different situations that people have come to in their journey of attaining their dreams of a family or even a second family. And so it might not always be what they pictured, but, in the end, we always are hopeful for the great outcome of fulfilling their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are different instances where couples realize that they might have to start contemplating or thinking about different options when they're going through their fertility journey. That, they've been told, they've come to the realization, maybe you've had to share the unlucky news with them, or they've heard it from somebody else and now they're coming to you for some support, that their eggs are just not as viable as they thought or they hoped that they were. Mm-hmm. How do you start that conversation with a couple in that situation?
Well, there's a couple instances. I'll kind of go over maybe two of the main aspects of it. There are some people who have come to us who've already struggled for years going through fertility treatment and not attaining a child yet that they wanted. And so we can reevaluate things for them, see where they are currently, what has been attempted for them. And, a lot come already with the understanding, knowing that they've already tried everything. There's nothing, they've never been able to attain viable eggs or perhaps normal embryos to get that pregnancy. And so some are already in that preparation of, okay, how do I get a baby at this point? I understand that it might not be, my child, or they're already pursuing adoption situations. And so we can open up other options for people. There are a few more that hopefully we'll discuss a little bit today. And then a second situation that comes is some people have finally just come in their life for a fertility evaluation for the first time. Some, we've heard, like I said, many stories. Some have, at 45, just found their first true love. Right. And they're ready to start a family. Some are on their second family. Some just have been too busy with their career or schooling or different aspects. They've never been able to take the time to start a family. So we do the evaluation for them, and if we see that their values, maybe they're already into menopause or other situations where there's just no option going forward. Of course, if they want to give it a try, take that chance to try a fertility treatment. We have a few options that they can with the fertility doctors that we work with. But some opt to do that just to see if there's any last opportunity that they have first to attain that closure, to make sure, okay, I know this isn't going to work, and let's go from there. And then some are just ready at that point to move forward.
Yeah, they just want a family.
Exactly. And so that's where it gets into, some have already just figured, hey, my next step, if I can't make a normal embryo, is adoption. That's all that's really out there that I can do. And so some have already started the adoption process when they've come to us, or some have already talked about it. And then they come to your eggs and they're like, wow, I didn't know that donor eggs is an option.
Yeah. These couples have all been thinking about having children with their own eggs and their own sperm and creating their biological embryos. When they start to contemplate and hear for the first time, well, maybe I do have to consider egg donation, or they start to think about and come to you that they've been thinking about adoption, what's their first reaction to that process? Like, it's got to be difficult because it's not what anybody intended to do.
Right. Well, it could be different reasons that they're hesitant on egg donation. Some think it's like an outlandish price. It's going to take too much time and effort. If they're already going to get someone else's eggs, they might as well just adopt, which is great. I mean, adoption is a great way to go, and it offers a lot for the children and the parents. But some have already, when they've looked into it, they find out different hurdles that they have to go through, even through adoption.
Right.
It can be a lot more expensive than egg donation. Or,
Absolutely, yeah.
They find out that they can't adopt newborns. For example, in some states, if you're 40, you already have to adopt a 5-year-old, and then every year after that. The wait can be extraordinary. It's amazing. You would think, oh, there's so many children out there who need families, and yet it can take them years to finally get a child. So some come already knowing those situations or have been on wait lists forever. And so then they're like, wow, I can't believe that with egg donation, I have all these options open to me. I could look into the past, the pictures of the egg donor, their education, different things like that. And it's less, it could be affordable. There's a lot of different options of fresh and frozen eggs that they might want to attain. And so it affords that opportunity to have a newborn. And then that's where it gets into where, they're actually able to carry that child and have that connection. And I think that's beautiful. That some just don't realize until they actually have had that experience. And, I've talked to so many who haven't gone through it yet and then who have. And just the difference and change when they're like, wow, I didn't know I could feel this way about the child that I'm carrying. And, I love how Dr. Wood always brings up about epigenetics. And when you read about it and really get into the science of it, how the mother that's carrying that child, even though the child has a different DNA in a sense, her DNA is controlling, and her life aspects are controlling what is chosen in that baby's DNA. And so it still is part of you, and it still becomes your child.
Yeah, that epigenetic piece to me has always been one that I have leaned on when I've spoken to couples who have to make this decision about using egg donor, because in their mind, there's this clear, it's black and white. It's just this clear separation of biology. Like, no, it's theirs and this is mine, and the two shall never meet. But that's not true.
Right.
And once they realize that biologically you do help that embryo develop and make some of those key decisions and differentiations biologically, it's a light switch that goes off for them that really just opens it up like, wow, this is a truly special and unique situation where you have this individual who's able to donate an egg that I get to use, and yet I can still be part of that biological process. Absolutely. Where they just didn't think that was possible. And certainly that's not possible with adoption.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And so it's wonderful to see that, and beautiful in the situations that we've come across. I mean, I don't know if I can share like a couple that I think about
Yeah.
right now.
I'd love to hear a
Yeah.
story. Where I'd love to start is a story about, a couple who had to make that decision and had to transition to egg donor. Do you have one of those to share?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a great story to tell you. In fact, it was of a couple who already started the adoption process before they even came to us. And they were on a wait list. Then they started to find out about egg donation, started the process with that, was able to attain a pregnancy using egg donor, and then they actually ended up adopting too, because by the time they got pregnant, there was a child available for adoption for them, so they just completed that process. So they got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, and
Yeah.
and it actually speaks to the time they were on this wait list for adoption. It shows how long that wait list could be. So that's a unique situation. How difficult was it, or what was it like for you to kind of to support them and educate them and help them transition to that decision to actually move forward with egg donor?
So, of course, they were learning as they went too of all the things and options they had with egg donor, in picking the egg donor. And just a side note to bring into that situation is with anyone, I mean, you don't have to be committed to the egg donation to learn about the process. Take a look at the profiles. Get on, see what options you have, see how you feel. And that's where the emotional aspect comes into it with all of that. And, everyone at Your Eggs is very patient with that and understanding, because this is what we work with every day. And we're prepared for, and we can walk you through. I mean, some have to, they're looking at profiles and then they take a break for a couple weeks, because they're still processing everything, both mentally and emotionally. And so, and then they have that comfort as they're deciding things and viewing the options that they have between egg donors and genetics and the things they learn about education, or maybe something that they didn't think of. They're like, oh, this would be great to pick in an egg donor's history and things like that. So just it opens up a whole new world to them. And for some, and it can be a difficult journey.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean it can't have a happy ending. And
Yeah.
so, it might start where you do have that emotional difficulty, and as you go, it can change. And then you start to have that connection, and you're prepared for it as you're going through the cycle to have the pregnancy and the implantation of the embryo.
Yeah, so what I hear is that it's okay for these couples to make this decision over time, right? It's not a
Yes.
decision that needs
Yeah.
to be made in one specific moment. They can
Right.
kind of like dip their toe in a little bit.
Exactly.
Check out, is the water cold? Is the water warm? Does it change over time? Does it feel comfortable? Looking into the donor process, checking out the database, as you mentioned, I think is a wonderful way to start. It just allows you're not making a commitment, you're not starting anything, you're just browsing, you're just looking to see, how does this feel for me? Oh, this person kind of looks like me. Maybe I could see this happening, whereas before I didn't. And so it could be a transition that happens over time that allows them to feel more comfortable with that process together.
Right. And, many through their fertility journey, everything has been about timing. Oh, this has to happen tomorrow. They're like, time is of the essence, And so they could have spent the last few years in the fertility journey, and everything was like, you got to do this by next month. You have to do this by next month. So now, these are young, healthy embryos or eggs that are already created, and they're frozen. They're
Yep.
frozen in time for you. And a woman could carry for a lot longer than she can produce eggs. And so it's okay to take a little bit of a time now, because now is your time, and making the decision and, coming to whatever you envision as your happy ending.
Yeah, I think that is such an important message for everyone to take out from what you just said, because they are just always rush, rush, rush. So this allows them to create some space and some time and separation to allow them to make the right decisions for themselves. Yeah, it's beautiful. Now I want to hear from all of you, actually. Can you all comment below? One, have you gone through this process yourself? Comment below and let us know. And if you've got any questions about using an egg donor or going through that process or making that transition, please comment below, leave that question for us as well, and we'll do the best we can to answer that question for you. So, as much as I love egg donation, I know that adoption is also special and unique. It's such an amazing process and really courageous on, couples to be able to adopt an individual that they really know nothing about and their circumstances, and be able to bring them into their home and raise them as their own. Let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits and actually some of the challenges of adoption. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, with adoption, we see it all over the media and everything. It seems so easy, It's like someone's applying and the next day they have a baby, and I know it takes quite some time, but it's very commendable for couples that do take on that course. It could end up being very challenging for them. I mean, some, have ended up with child with emotional issues, especially if they're further along in age when they adopt them, and they've had to deal with different medical issues and things like that. So it is very commendable when patients take that on, and it's always an option for anyone. It's always there. So, I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to help children. I mean, there's so many out there without families, without parents, the affordable option to have families, and it's beautiful. It's a miracle for parents who are willing to take that journey. And
yeah, and one of the things that I think about when we think about one of the beautiful things about adoption is that you can adopt different children at different ages, right, from all over the world, which brings in a lot of diversity. You're helping out these children from maybe some impoverished countries that they wouldn't get the care and support that they need to be raised in a loving family. And you have these children that are maybe 10 or older, right? They could be just in these tween ages or just approaching teenage years that really need families in these crucial times. And it's such an amazing thing that couples can adopt these individuals in those circumstances.
Yeah, there's so many children in the system that have far surpassed, of course, newborn, toddler, and they just don't have homes, someone to help take care of them and get them to that adult age.
Yeah, but the goal and the dream of families who at least start working with you and want to have children is to be able to carry a baby in their arm. And I think that is one of the more challenging pieces when it comes to adoption.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the challenge of being able to have a newborn with the adoption process, because there's a lot of families that want that newborn, right?
Yes, yeah, and many come to us at Your Eggs with already that experience that has happened. And
you mean they've been going through the adoption process and realized they can't get a newborn?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
Some are already at 6 years, 10 years old, 12 years old, because there are certain laws on that also. Or there's just not availability for the newborns in the system. Because sometimes, too, with newborns, it's harder with adoption because maybe their parents haven't released it to adoption, or it's just a temporary foster homes. So a lot of newborns are still in the foster system and not necessarily in the adoption system yet.
Okay. Do you have a story of a couple that you were working with that did choose adoption and everything worked out, positively for them?
Oh, yes. We have many who have done adoption, but a lot of them already, either vice versa. They were waiting on the wait list for adoption and ended up still using donor eggs and getting pregnant, having like the experience that I spoke about before. Or there's some who were pregnant with the donor eggs and then ended up still adopting later.
Right.
Because like I had mentioned, adoption's always
Always an option.
Always an option, yeah, at any time. So, but some still want to try to get pregnant when they're still of a particular age too.
Got it. Okay. So I'd like to touch on, now that we've talked about both egg donor and adoption, I'd like to touch on the pros and cons. Like, let's compare them a little bit. If you were comparing the adoption process and the egg donation process, let's hit on some key points. Let's talk about timeline. So which one do you think, from your experience, is faster?
Oh, by far, it would be egg donation, of course, because there's a lot of options out there, like fresh or frozen eggs. So some have already gone through even the process, and some of our intended parents buy the frozen eggs that have already been created. So they don't even have to wait for the donor, to go through a cycle. The eggs are already available to them. So it could be as soon as like 2 months.
That's fast.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
super fast. How long does it, are you aware of the timeline for a typical adoption process?
From what some of our patients have told us, a lot of them have still come to us on a wait list for 1 or 2 years.
Wow.
And they still haven't, gotten anything as far as any options
That's a big
open
difference
to them.
in timeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And then how about cost? Like, I know that a lot of people think of egg donation and they think it's super expensive. In comparison to adoption, are we talking apples to apples?
I mean, it definitely can be a half the cost, quarter of the cost in many cases.
Egg donation
Egg donation
is
correct.
half the cost of adoption.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's an important piece for everyone watching to register, right? It's faster to use egg donor. It's less expensive, but the kicker for me is going to be on the genetic side of things.
Yes. So
That's the biggest discrepancy
Absolutely.
when we're talking about egg donation and adoption.
Yes. So one thing with your eggs is we have the largest database of donors. So we have over 1,500 donors available on the database from all different ethnicities. So people can choose and look through that database and have a lot of options open to them. So you already have a large part in what you're picking for your future baby. So a lot, even from all different countries, have come to us just looking for a specific donor.
That's beautiful.
Based on even areas where they live or were born themselves. And so they have those options open to them. Where, of course, with adoption, which is a wonderful option, but you are basically just on a wait list for whatever baby comes available.
Regardless, you don't know in terms of genetics. You could choose a certain country, right? You could choose an infant from a certain country, but
Right.
health-wise and genetically, you don't know much. Whereas with egg donation, you have a lot more control over that process, not only selecting the donor, but you get to carry, so you know what that baby's life gestationally was like and what nutrients and how everything was during that time.
Right, and actually a comment on that, I've actually looked into that myself for other countries as far as adoption, and there's a lot of red tape. It's an even longer wait list. I mean, the wait list was like almost 5 years for me, so it can take a lot longer.
So one interesting statistic that I looked up and found, which blew my mind when I was looking up adoption and newborns, is that for every one newborn that gets adopted, there are 36 couples waiting for that one baby.
Wow.
It's huge, right?
Yeah. It's actually, that's beautiful.
Well, it's beautiful.
It's sad that, all those parents are waiting, but it is great, too, that all those families are waiting for a baby, too. So we want them to have a chance.
But it shows you of those 36, only one of them,
Yeah.
so there's 35 still waiting for another newborn. And
Right.
this is where I think the beauty of egg donation really comes in, is that it gives them that opportunity in such a beautiful way, in a faster way as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, Shaundre, I want to thank you so much for joining, for sharing your experiences, your knowledge of being an IVF coordinator, and really your touching moments with all of these couples. So I really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of you for watching as well. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the end of the video, for watching this video. Hopefully you learned a lot through it. Again, I want to invite you to leave some comments or questions down below for us, and we'll do our best to get back to those. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And again, if you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe. And if you want more information on egg donation or finding the right egg donor for you and your family, then please check out youreggs.com.